When I finally got to the point through journaling, probably therapy, coaching, and all that stuff of realizing like, no, I can be trusted around money. Like money doesn't need to run away from me. I don't need to jeopardize the money. I don't need to blow myself up. I don't need to go up and down and be another story. Like I can be a good steward. And when I started getting hints of that, it was a game changer kind of for the rest of my path.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or investment advice. Please consult a professional advisor before making decisions based on what you hear on this show. Welcome to that Wall Street Tribe. Excited to introduce you today, Mr. JP Newman. JP, thanks for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
JP, I want to take you back a number of years because I think there's a real purpose for the listener who is either A, striving to achieve financial freedom, success, whatever measurement they would use to come up with that, or they have just arrived in that. A number of years back, you had been working really hard, got to a point where, using your words, you said, man, had all the cars, had the income, started to see the bank balance going up. For you, was that a moment that was like super exciting or maybe something else?
Well, I think that as an entrepreneur, we all dream of what it's going to be like when we get to the other side. I know for me, for years, I had a lot of dreams about what my life could look like if I only had money. I spent my 20s hustling, doing everything I could. I remember once walking into a Porsche dealership and just looking at these cars and can I ever afford a car like this? It just seems so out of range for anything that I would ever be able to accomplish in my lifetime. So to be on the other side of that, where I'm at now, it's a pretty incredible journey. But to answer your question, I'd spent so many years, a lot of my friends call me a late bloomer. I spent my 20s and 30s thinking that I was supposed to be a millionaire. Tony Robbins, I did all the Tony Robbins courses. I listened to every tape, and I really thought by 30, I should just be a millionaire. Well, at 30, I was absolutely broke. I was so far, and it seemed like the harder I tried, the further I got from it. I went through like 7 companies, and they were all close, and I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, and with just this dream of like, I'm finally going to make it. So ironically, when I moved to Austin, Texas from Los Angeles and, started my real estate company, Thrive FP, and it started taking off. I mean, I worked hard. I was so kind of addicted and used to the adrenaline of working hard that when money started to come in and all of a sudden I could afford things, it was so anticlimactic. It was actually anxiety provoking for me. And I think it was anxiety provoking because I think I had the vision board of the car, of the material things that this money would afford me. I wouldn't have to stress. I could pay my rent. I could do all these things, but I didn't really have any other dimensions for it except like what it would do for me monetarily. And so when it hit me and I actually got my first BMW convertible, which was on my vision board for like 10 years. I had that damn car just pegged on my vision board. It was kind of anticlimactic. In fact, it got weird because I was like, what are my friends going to think about me now? Are they my real friends? Is this going to affect my marriage? Like, can I trust people the same way? Or people are going to ask me for things? Like, it got really uncomfortable. And so a lot of my journey has been a journey around not just making money, but a journey around like financial literacy, which involves not just the framework of how to hold on to money and how to invest money for both me and my investors, but also what's the mindset behind it so that you get the maximum pleasure. You can not be in scarcity, but you can be in abundance and you can be in a place of peace and flow with your money. You realize how fun it is because you're taking care of people versus kind of my early days that you were talking about where I just had no concept of what wealth actually meant.
If you've listened to our show for any length of time, you've heard us talk about infinite banking and how we were able to use that concept to create over $50,000 a month in passive income. But it's just not that easy to figure out how does this all connect into my own personal system.
Stallion, that's why we created the passive income operating system, bro. It shows you how to turn active income into passive income. It makes all the steps come together. If you would like to get access to it as a podcast listener, we've never given this away in public before. Go to what'swhatwallstreet.com/PIOS.
It's so cool to hear someone's story from the position of what when I get there, it's going to look like this, getting there and having some element of disappointment or even confusion what was the next step that you took that, I mean, you told us the result of now having frameworks and things that you've kind of built as a result. What was the first thing that you did once you got to that?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the biggest thing for me was way before frameworks. So to be honest, this has taken many years to kind of figure out my whole thing about four-dimensional wealth. It's taken a long time to figure this out, but the number one thing that I had to get to that was a game changer, and it probably took me 3 years after making money, was knowing that whatever happened, I could trust myself. I think there was a feeling of, now that I've got money, and I've actually made it, can I trust myself? Am I going to be a good steward of this? Am I really going to do good things? Am I going to be that same person? Like, is this going to corrupt my character in any way? And when I finally got to the point through journaling, probably therapy, coaching, and all that stuff, of realizing, like, no, I can be trusted around money. Like, money doesn't need to run away from me. I don't need to jeopardize the money. I don't need to blow myself up. I don't need to go up and down and be another story. Like, I can be a good steward. And when I started getting hints of that, it was a game changer kind of for the rest of my path.
JP, do you think that is just part of your nature? Or is that a learned trait, something that you always had, or something that going through this process, you gained a framework or a process to follow that got you to that mindset?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I really think I was not born with this at all. I think I was born just like a lot of other, just normal person, just, ambitious, always told, to make something of myself, and, very proud parents, always thought, which is great, you're going to be so and some, so besides all that, this school, who teaches you frameworks? Like, who teaches you in school? They teach you journal entry accounting, right? Like, they're not teaching you frameworks, which is why everyone loves Rich Dad, Poor Dad as the beginning of at least cash flow real estate. But like, where do we learn our values and where do we get educated around money? And the answer was, it took this situation. It took me, thank goodness, 15 years of really just churning and figuring it out and having lots of setbacks. It also humbled me and has made me a lot more grateful for the success I have today. But I think it was like that journey that actually really got me to think about this, Russ.
JP, do me a favor now. The person is saying, okay, he spent 15 years figuring this out. How can we compress time? How can we borrow some of that? Could you summarize like what this framework has kind of turned into for you, that makes you can dig into each piece?
Sure. So what I realize is that once you realize that money is not one dimensional, it's not just cash you keep in your bank with whatever a balance is, but because money one dimensionally, which is a lot of how financial planners work or what have you, we're going to save money for your retirement. So when you're 70, you'll have money. And I won't even get into that story. But that's a very one dimensional story. But if your life's not really about your money, if your life is really about, at the end of the day, when you die, isn't really your money about what purpose wealth did you have on this planet? What purpose were you here for? And did you achieve it? Were you a good father? Were you a good husband? Were you a good business partner? Were you a good entrepreneur? Were you a good person to whoever that person was? And then, of course, there's your relationship, your people wealth, your community wealth. How did you interact? Did you have a group of friends? Was it a church group? Was it your best friends? How did you show up as a friend? And what are your friendships really, really like, from your closest to your family to your closest friends, and then ultimately to your community? Do you have a relationship within your community? And then, of course, there's your time wealth. Are you living your day? Are you waking up happy? Are you living your day in presence, and are you going to sleep peacefully? Or are you the person on your phone overwhelmed by the amount of texts and things you need to respond to, that you're just getting through your day and doing the same thing a day? Do you own your wealth, your time wealth, or does your time wealth own you? And then finally, health, because obviously health is energy. That's why I think currency, that if you think about money as currency, what is currency? It's essentially a current. Very much like these other things. It's a marker. Your currency is just like your marker of health. When you have currency, you have energy and you feel good. When you don't have currency in your health, you tend to feel in dis-ease. And so I see a lot of similarities. They're like different energies that need to be in alignment with one another.
One of the things that just stood out of those different, segments is, as entrepreneurs, business owners, we're, especially in our stage of life, we have kids. They're going in 5 different directions. We've got a business and it's going in 3 or 4 different directions. And they're not always up, by the way, right? Like there's some downs in this time frame. We have a lot on our plate. I feel like it's easier for us to go to bed with anxiety, to wake up with stress, to not enjoy it because we're in those hard moments.
Yeah.
Take us back to like, you now have 15 years of being past that moment for yourself. Take us back to, you're coaching yourself, thinking through those moments. How do you get yourself out of that just survival mode to this idea of thriving?
Russ, actually it's a practice and it never ends. You don't figure it out and then it ends. It's honestly just like working out at the gym. It's an ongoing practice of a mindset. And I'll give you an example before even having to go back. If I can just go to the present, like including like this morning, I Thrive FP, we've done 20,000 apartment units, over $2 billion of transactions. We also have a debt fund. We've done about $600 million of lending. So we've had great success here at the company. But, we are now on the other side of the real estate cycle where we're being pushed back, and we're definitely having our challenges during this time. And the mind, and I've done so much work around this, and the mind has a tricky way, Russ, just like you're saying, it's easy to go to sleep nervous and like, oh my God, is the company strong enough? Have I built a strong enough protection and like foundation for not only myself, but for my company? And the daily reminder is I have. And so like, even like I go back and look at my own structure of 4-dimensional wealth. I look at my own cash flow wealth pyramid, which includes not only my investments in my liquid cash, it includes, have I asset protected and properly corrected my family? Do I have the right tax planning? Am I doing the right taxes things? And do I have the best tax planning and estate planning? Like one day when this passes on, not just the money, but will the legacy, will my kids understand what this was all about rather than just getting a sum of money? And I know we're all worried about having kids that become brats. So what do we need to do in our mindset to do all those things? And so like, again, I think when you have a solid structure, when you understand what you're doing this for, and it's bigger than money, it's for these other purposes as well. So then you take that mindset, but then you need a framework around the mindset. So the mindset's one piece of it, of like understanding what you're here for. And everyone, if you live long enough, guys, I'm sure you've interviewed now thousands of people. It's not always just up. All businesses have cycles, so you're going to get pushed back, and that's just the way it is. So if you kind of understand that in your mindset, but you know that you've built yourself a solid foundation to protect and to take care of your loved ones, I think that's actually the ongoing discipline practice of both mindset and actual structure of checking in to make sure you've done the right thing and that you're really at the place that you want to be at.
So JP, that's super interesting. But you said right now, like you're having to apply that framework, even amidst the fact that your business is in a cycle.
Yeah.
So what are some practical things that you're literally doing today in light of that?
I'll just tell you about this morning. How about that?
Let's go.
So I'm starting my mornings. I'm waking up a little earlier. I do wake up and I'm feeling some of the problems, some of the pressure, some of the challenges in my business that I need to face and fix right now. And I used to fight it, but now I kind of just get out of bed, 5:30, 6 o'clock, which isn't so bad. Go to sleep a little earlier. And the first thing I'm trying to do right now is read a little bit of something that's inspiring, whether it's spiritual text, business text. I don't just want to jump on my phone. I really want to take some time and ground out. I actually then from that point go into a physical routine where I do a workout and then I do a cold plunge later on. So the cold plunge is very, very grounding and presencing. And then I do a very, very short meditation. It's actually Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you've heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, where you're really kind of foreshadowing for your day, and I call it a 15 or 20 minute meditation. That's a guided meditation. You don't know it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's free. You can get it on YouTube. But he actually walks you through what's your intention for that day. What do you want to create for that day? And I find that meditation with those other things are a great way to ground my day, to remember what I'm here to do, why I'm here, my purpose, all the things of what I'm here to do, and what I specifically need to get accomplished that day without getting overwhelmed with the big picture. It's like one day at a time, one step at a time when things get a little rough.
There was nothing worse than walking into class when you're in school and the teacher saying, "Pop quiz day." Why? Because you were unprepared. Are you unprepared, though, for financial freedom?
Don't be. Find out how close you are by taking our 30-second quiz at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/quiz.
Hey, as a fan of our podcast, chances are you're always looking for other great resources to grow your wealth and build financial freedom.
And if you've ever been curious about self-storage investing, there's only one guy you need to listen to, our good friend, Scott Myers.
Yeah, Scott is the OG of self-storage. He's been in the game for years, and his podcast, Self-Storage Investing, is packed with insights, strategies, and real-world success stories.
Whether you're just getting started or you're looking to scale, Scott's podcast will help you understand why self-storage is one of the most recession-resistant cash-flowing assets out there.
Yeah, go check out Self-Storage Investing with Scott Myers. Wherever you listen to podcasts, trust us, you'll be hooked.
What would you say is one of the things, JP, right now that as you have entrepreneurs coming to you and obviously investing with you, right? Like you mentioned that you guys have 20,000 doors, super impressive, have done 600 million in lending. That's a good amount of money. What are these things that you're hearing investors say that they're looking for, and how are you guys meeting that challenge as a company?
Yeah, well, obviously, after we've all had this incredible run where we've had incredible returns, incredible cash flow, and specifically in my asset class of multifamily right now, and there's most of commercial real estate, the days of consistent cash flow are very hard to solve by. And we all know why. The inflation is not just the interest rates, it's really everything. It's the taxes, it's the interest rates, it's employee salaries are up, and yet rents are flat. So like any business, if you have an apartment, which is just a business, where your expenses are up and your revenue is down, it's causing a strain on the business right now. So I think investors have been just nervous. I think they got used to really good times where I think for most of us, if we knew what we were doing and had relatively good assets, the market had such a beautiful momentum in it to create these 15 to 25% annual returns. And we did that a bunch of times. It was super fun when you can produce that. But right now, when the market's kind of, I call it rediscovering itself, and going through kind of this price discovery and cap rate discovery, investors get nervous. Am I safe? Am I okay? And, the answer for all of us, as we all know, is that like my job at Thrive and my team's job is to be the best fiduciary we can in everything that we can control. So all the micro control operations, are we running this building as efficiently as possible? Do we have all the leasing strategies in place? Are we really doing everything that we can? But then obviously beyond that, there's macroeconomic, and the macroeconomic is going to be all the things I'm sure you guys talk about a lot with interest rates and all that. So we're really focusing here at Thrive on controllable expenses. And we talk a lot about these days about what are the controllable expenses that we can really make sure that we own those and that we're doing an A+ job on those. And I think for investors, I think that it's just a reminder that these are all cycles. And the good news is that these cycles go up, then they kind of reset and you have price discovery, and then they come back again. And then there's amazing opportunities. So I really feel like right now we are in the beginning of a new cycle, and the cycle is going to create a lot of prosperity for a lot of investors out there who are with the right companies on the right properties. There's going to be a whole wave of prosperity. And in multifamily, when you simply think about that, there's going to be, call it 6 million more people who need workforce housing, which is what I specialize in. Rents between $1,000 and $1,800 is how I define workforce. And knowing that there's a 6 million unit imbalance between supply and demand. In other words, 6 million more people need housing than what's available. And you can't develop it that fast. You can't just magically build 6 million units. It makes me feel really optimistic about the long-term future of multifamily investing. So short term, it's a little scary. I'd say that, everyone's a little nervous, and that's rightfully so. You're in a changing market. Long term, I think we all should be super excited and look for those opportunities.
JP, you are pointing out the fact that opportunity is always typically around the corner, but I want to point to something that you and I talked about off camera earlier about some of the ways in which you invest in your communities. And I love that you call it the workhorse communities is kind of what you specialize in. What are some of the ways that you guys are investing in those communities, and what is the result of that for both the tenants and your investors?
Yeah. So, for many years when I was back to kind of more survival mode in building the company, I never really had the luxury to think about the whole value chain or all my stakeholders. So you think about it, when you're an apartment you own an apartment and you're an investor, there's a whole group of people. There's your residents that, well, they're a stakeholder. Your managers, your team is a stakeholder. Your investors are stakeholders. You have all these stakeholders. The janitor is everyone's a stakeholder. And I think when you come to the recognition, which is commonly called like conscious capitalism, that every stakeholder needs to win, not just your investor or shareholder, because ultimately when you just focus on your investor or shareholder and not the rest of the stakeholders, you actually generally don't create as good of long-term results as if you actually focus on the entire body. So I think the realization to thrive, which is why we're called Thrive FP, which is we are for purpose and we are for profit. So we're not a nonprofit, we are a for profit. So keeping that in mind is, how do I serve those investors, but not on the backs of the residents? And I think step one is just recognizing as an owner if that's important to you or not. I can tell you economically some of the things that we've done and the results of it. So for us, we've engaged both in our own resident retention programs, is what we call it. And so we'll do things on the for-profit side. We will put in solar. We will do certain kind of social programs, free tutoring for the kids, free daycare, things like that we do that we know have an accretive effect. Because what we're finding out is that the more programs you give, or even subsidize at a low amount, and we add more to that. On the nonprofit side, we also have a nonprofit that I co-founded, and we actually do free telemedicine in certain communities. So if you're on the rent roll, you actually qualify through Teledoc for free telemedicine for you and your family in the communities that we know need it. We also do financial literacy, teaching people how to save for a down payment for a house, giving them the power, giving them the empowerment and the encouragement, and sometimes even rewarding them for learning this literacy. We also do like job enhancement, where we're training you for jobs to get different kinds of online diplomas so you can hire your salary. So we're doing all these things really to benefit the resident. And so why do we do that? Besides, obviously, it is a purpose for me. I'm very passionate about creating thriving communities, which is why my company's called Thrive. But besides that, the business side of that is we have found typically about a 30% higher retention rate by simply having these programs. And the way that retention rate stays higher, it's not only do our residents stay longer, but we find that we get more referrals. So in other words, we don't have to advertise or pay leasing agents for referrals for new tenants. We don't have to carpet and repaint our units every 12 months. That's a huge savings. As you know, typically to turn a unit, as it's called, with new paint and new carpet, it's between $5,000 and $15,000. Well, if I'm doing that 30% less, you can imagine to the bottom line what that does on a cap rate basis. And so we find that we have a better reputation, more referrals, and longer durations of stays. And that's why we think this is really as much a resident retention program as it is a social impact program.
Is this a model that you saw somewhere out there and have just been dialing it in, or is it something you guys created from scratch and have been learning the lessons along the way? It seems like, I could see some of those things are maybe easier to facilitate than others. Like running a daycare, that seems like a big lift, right? Like to have one of those on property. So talk a little bit about that. Like, I love the results, because that's what I was going to ask about until you said it, is what's the effectiveness of it. Yeah. But also, how do you manage the challenge of facilitating it? And, where did that idea come from?
Well, number one, that's why we formed the nonprofit. So there's a nonprofit called Veritas Impact Partners that I was the co-founder of. And all Veritas does as a nonprofit is implement these resident retention programs for any owner. So if any owner out there wants to be part of this program, you can hire the nonprofit to actually implement these programs for you. And so, Russ, to your point is, there were a couple organizations, and there still are, doing different variations of this. Some are religious and they want you to read the Bible, or they want you to read something, and that's okay. But I didn't want mine to necessarily really have anything. I didn't want this to be transactional. I just wanted it to be, your owner cares about you and is providing you with this service. And then some of them tend to be like different programs, but not necessarily the approach that we took. There's a few others out there, but the approach that we kind of took was, how do the residents feel valued by us? Like, how do we truly make them feel valued? So at Veritas, we say our office is your living room, or your living room is our office. And we actually bring out we have basically these resident directors that knock on the door in, language appropriate, culturally appropriate for the building. And it takes a while because a lot of times people don't, the residents don't necessarily trust you when someone's knocking on your door. What do you want? What's it going to cost me? And it takes a while to build a relationship. But what we found through time is that person kind of becomes the advocate for the person, the concierge for the person. And so we found that actually this knocking on the door by door, it's a lot of work. But if you look at our open rates of our emails, if you look at our utilization rate of our telemedicine, if you look at like people who will say, honestly, I can't pay rent this month, and I'm really afraid to tell the owner, they feel safe enough to tell this neutral third party, and this neutral third party will try to apply to different nonprofits for rent relief. And we've done quite a bit of money. I mean, I know it's over 50, it might be closer to 100,000 now, just in the last 2 years of helping people pay their rent and not get evicted. So you develop this relationship. And the rest of the way it works, the secret of how this works, quite frankly, is you don't try to create all these programs yourself. You partner with either for-profits like Teladoc or other nonprofits. Like the daycare was actually a nonprofit for low-income families. And we just partnered with them. We had an extra recreational space that we just gave the space away, and they actually did the programming. So once you have an intention to do something like this, there's a lot of resources out there that don't have to necessarily be crazy expensive to actually create these kind of impactful programs for your residents.
What it sounds like to me, JP, is just like what Russ and I talk a lot about is when you have purpose, it just shows up, right? You're clear about your purpose. The people and the opportunities make themselves available. And man, we've lived the purpose. We follow Jesus Christ and his design for this world, and so we constantly try to steward our resources in light of that. And that's on our show. We're unashamed to talk about that.
Great.
It's really cool to hear how you're giving back to the people that you have been entrusted. At the end of the day, those are people that you're stewarding their lives in an asset like an apartment complex, but these are really human lives that have been entrusted to you. So really,
I think we have a great responsibility to do it. And one of the things if I have a podcast called Investing on Purpose. And one of the things I talk a lot about on investing on purpose is a lot of people don't know, they know their how, but they don't know their why. And I always say, if you want to get to your why, one of the easiest ways to get to your why, I call it the Starbucks exercise, because I joke and say, go to a Starbucks and go write for an hour. But you're going to, and write what's important to you and just kind of be audacious of like, what's really important to you. And what I found, and it kind of commenting to what you said, is that when you start asking yourself the question, why is this important to me? Like, I want to help empower and educate children. Well, why do you want to do that? And the brain usually will have 10 different reasons, but ultimately what I find is is deep down, it's an emotion. It's like, because I have such respect for this, because I really realize this. I can tell you this for me, going back to kind of the Judeo-Christian values that you're talking about. What this is about for me, it's not about me giving, although it is fun to give. It's actually about the concept of, what does it mean to love a stranger? That's a very, and by the way, I'm Jewish actually, but I really think it's a powerful thing when Jesus talks about, loving a stranger, and the 10 Commandments talks about a lot of things about, that the fifth, I won't go into the whole thing, but the point is this idea of truly caring for your neighbor. And I can't think of a more interesting way to do it than provide them with a community. And then for me, the word I used to use was respect. It's like, we owe them our respect. They're my clients. They've created this incredible life where I get to hang out with you guys and be on this podcast. But if you actually think about it, beyond respect, what you're really saying is that you actually love and care about somebody, loving thy neighbor. And so I actually think this is my spiritual work. This is my gift that's been given to me it makes me want to tomorrow get better for you guys. So next time you have me on your show, I can tell you the 5 next things that I'm doing. And I hope that doesn't sound corny. It's just kind of where I've come to at this point in my life.
No, I love that. This is, as entrepreneurs, investors, our goal is to get to a point of safety to where that we can start thinking in the future. It's a mindset, as you said, it's a framework to follow. then self-actualization happens, and we really are treating those around us with respect. We're able to help more people, right? The best thing to do for the poor is not be one of them, right? And like, you've built not only a community of investors, but also an investment community in the place of where your people are living. So if one of our audience members would like to learn more about what you're up to at Thrive and get plugged into your movement, where would you send them?
Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about, multifamily investing opportunities, it would be thrivefp.com, which I think is on the screen. And there's a whole inquiry page that can show you what we do, and love to chat with you about that. There is some great opportunities that we're starting to peek through. And then if anybody wants to know more about 4-dimensional wealth, or what does it really mean, this mindset or this journey, I have a podcast called Investing on Purpose. And Investing on Purpose is on all the major, from YouTube to Spotify to Apple. And it's really an episode where, like, my last episode was with John Mackey, who I think is the co-founder of Whole Foods. And it was really fun to go down his purpose journey of how he got Whole Foods was a dream when he was 18. And to hear his story, and he talks about, like, as he got more successful and managed this $22 billion company, more and more people were coming at him. And he had to learn how to lead with love in the midst of all the turmoil. And hearing a gentleman who started with nothing and turned it into a $22 billion grocery chain, obviously bought by Amazon, we all have these journeys to go on. And it's just something I find so fascinating, and we'll continue doing.
I love it. Well, Thrive, you have some takeaways here. Go to thrivefp.com or check out his podcast. Thank you so much, JP, for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun hearing your story.
It's so great, guys. Thank you for all the great work that you do.
All right, Thrive, have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.